Hi, I'm Sarah Wilder, and welcome to part 21 of Surviving the Man I Married. If you've joined me earlier, then you know I've been on a break for a little over a month, resting, recharging my batteries, and I'm back at it again. I've made one change, though, you'll notice if you've already been here before. Instead of one long episode for each part of my story, I'm breaking the parts or the episodes up into smaller bits. My goal is to get each episode under 4 minutes. So previously you heard about the dismal second half of the year 2021. It was rough. Um, in part 21, which I'm going to break into three small episodes, you're going to hear about the first half of 2022, how Jim got COVID and I got a new job. New Year 2022 started off a little bit gloomy, just kind of how 2021 ended. And sadly, the new year found me with none of the three dogs I had just a year earlier. Two of them were brothers. They were elderly and they died from cancer, old age, and bad hearts. And the dog that passed away in the middle of those two brothers was the dachshund that died from a genetic spinal defect. So 2022 started off. I had my little wiener dog puppy, Rosie, I'd gotten in Dillon, Montana the summer before. And in December of 21, I adopted a rescue dog. It's a Pomeranian with a mouthful of rotten teeth. I had to have them all pulled out. She weighed under 5 pounds, and I named her Dolly. And she's just a joy. Also important for 2022, the year started off my second year of getting human plasma infusions. So I'd had a full year of them, and I was feeling strong and fit and great, ready to expand my life. So, on that note, I started looking for part time work in the area. In December, I ordered a Subaru. I already told you about that. Ordered everything I wanted, like a deli sandwich at Whole Foods. And I was waiting, it would be a 3 or 4 month wait. So until then, I was looking for a job. At that same time, I was on the upswing. Things with Jim were on the downswing. The job he was at, a job he loved, running the warehouse for an online knife retailer in Pleasant Grove, Utah, it was dwindling. His job was diminishing by the week. The employer had decided to move all warehouse operations to the East Coast, so Jim's job was getting smaller and smaller by the week, and he was getting more and more disgruntled. Many of the people he worked with had found warehouse jobs elsewhere, including, I found out, his former flame, Phyllis. So, in the early days of seeing the psychic and learning about Jim's cheating and his girlfriend at work, Phyllis, I had a little habit called sipping and sleuthing, where I got 0 calorie margarita mix, my vape pen, and um, a mobile device and the internet. And I would look up people, phone numbers I didn't know on Jim's phone and whatnot. Well, I didn't really do that so much as now I just checked in on people and just did some searching. And that's when I learned that Phyllis, good old Phyllis, had made a run for it. And I'm talking a year earlier. Jim had never mentioned it. So I found out that Phyllis had left her warehouse job, left her husband of a quarter century, and she'd been at the warehouse for over a decade, and made a big move. She moved an hour and a half north to the wasteland west of Ogden to West Haven, Utah, rented a nice apartment, and got a brand new warehouse job. I found all of that out, and Jim had no idea I knew. So the temptation was there. I had to go with it. I decided to prank Jim a little bit. I decided to use my history of Phyllis bashing over the previous few years to bait Jim. I asked him if he knew what she was going to do when the warehouse closed in just a couple of months, saying that, gosh, she's been there over a decade, she has tons of experience. I guess she could probably have her pick of all the opportunities. And man, Jim did not miss a beat. He snapped at the chance to sting me with all things Phyllis, knowing what a triggering topic she'd been for me before. He first played it nonchalantly and then tried to tease me a little over the fact that I brought it up. And I know he was thinking I was probably jealous, but he'd be wrong. I hadn't thought about Phyllis since our idiotic pledge to wear cheap, ugly tungsten rings, pledge fake monogamy, and pretend like we were married. It was ridiculous. You heard about that in prior episodes. But he said two things: that A, Phyllis was sticking around to the end of March to collect the $2,500 severance bonus for all the employees that made it to the bitter end. But B, he hadn't heard her talk much about looking for a new job. So we know only one of those two things was true. My turn to twist the knife. I looked at Jim and I not so gently broke the news to the liar that I already knew Phyllis left and that she'd moved, got a new job, etc., etc. And he was stunned and pissed. Somehow he had underestimated my already proven resourcefulness and assumed I still carried a blowtorch for good old Phyllis. All he could manage was some muttering about my findings. And then he had the nerve to disparage my use of the internet for spying on people. Right, my guy. And I reminded him that only one of us violated our marriage vows when using the Wi Fi. And then I offered to show him the background report. I also interjected that I knew Ugly Yellow Boot Girl, whom I mentioned by her actual name, had since moved to Boise, Idaho. At that, he just got up, he shook his head, looked at the ground, and told me I was sick. And he left the room. And I had a glorious celebratory toke out on my little front porch with Mr. Jack Herrera, celebrating the small victories those of us attached to narcissists tend to cling to. All right, join me for the next episode. It's part 21B. Thank you for this new format and for hanging in there. I appreciate your patience.